Consciousness emerges from the intricate physical dance of particles, fields, and energy flows within the brain, a process rooted in the fundamental laws governing matter and information. At its core, this phenomenon arises when highly organized neural activity generates integrated information patterns that produce subjective experience, transforming raw electrochemical signals into the vivid theater of awareness, thoughts, emotions, and selfhood. Far from mystical ether or immaterial soul, consciousness stands as an emergent property of biological complexity, driven by the same physics that animates stars, shapes crystals, and powers computation, yet uniquely tied to the brain's architecture of roughly 86 billion neurons interconnected by trillions of synapses firing in synchronized waves. Neurons serve as the fundamental units, specialized cells evolved over billions of years to process environmental inputs through electrochemical gradients. Each neuron maintains a resting potential across its membrane, a voltage difference created by ion pumps like sodium-potassium ATPase, actively transporting charged particles against concentration gradients, consuming vast amounts of the brain's 20% of total body energy despite comprising only 2% of mass. When sensory stimuli or synaptic inputs depolarize the membrane beyond threshold, around -55 millivolts, voltage-gated channels flood the interior with sodium ions, triggering an action potential, a self-propagating spike racing along the axon at speeds up to 120 meters per second in myelinated fibers, ensuring rapid signal transmission across centimeters. This spike culminates at synaptic terminals where calcium influx triggers vesicle fusion, releasing neurotransmitter molecules like glutamate or dopamine into the synaptic cleft, a mere 20 to 40 nanometer gap. These chemicals bind postsynaptic receptors, opening ion channels that either excite or inhibit the receiving neuron, modulating its membrane potential in probabilistic fashion, influenced by second messenger cascades amplifying signals intracellularly. Trillions of such events cascade through layered cortical hierarchies. Primary sensory areas like V1 in visual cortex extract edges and orientations from retinal ganglion cell inputs, feeding abstracted features to higher regions like inferotemporal cortex for object recognition, all while feedback loops from prefrontal areas impose top-down attention and context. Synchronization emerges as critical. Gamma oscillations around 40 Hz bind disparate features into coherent percepts, as seen in experiments where disrupting these rhythms via transcranial magnetic stimulation impairs binding without halting local processing. Thalamocortical loops, involving relay nuclei shuttling signals between cortex and thalamus, sustain reverberating activity essential for working memory, holding information online for seconds against passive decay. The posterior cortical hot zone, spanning parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes, lights up during vivid imagery and psychedelics, suggesting it houses the neural correlates where content-specific experiences localize before global broadcast. Integrated information theory posits consciousness as the capacity of a system to integrate information beyond what its parts generate independently, quantified by phi, a measure peaking in causally interconnected networks resisting reduction. High phi demands both differentiation, many possible states, and integration, irreducible holistic cause-effect power, precisely matching the brain's massively parallel yet unified architecture. Global neuronal workspace theory complements this. Sparse, strong-firing neurons in prefrontal and parietal hubs ignite widespread ignition across cortex, amplifying salient signals for access by decision, memory, and language modules, creating the broadcast feel of entering awareness. Yet physics demands deeper foundations. Quantum effects subtly influence as microtubules in neuronal dendrites, hollow cylinders of tubulin proteins, host coherent vibrations potentially computing via orchestrated objective reduction, where gravitational collapse of superposition states selects conscious moments at millisecond scales. Penrose-Hameroff's OR theory suggests these computations evade decoherence through screening by ordered water layers and aromatic rings, linking quantum gravity to qualia, though critics argue thermal noise overwhelms such fragility in warm, wet brains. Energetics underpin everything. Brain metabolism churns through 20 watts continuously, spiking during tasks, fueling ATP synthesis via mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation, converting glucose and oxygen into electrochemical currency. Actualized differences of motion and tension, energy gradients driving ion flows, vesicle docking, protein folding, manifest intrinsically as experience per some views, where the what it's like inheres in undergoing these organized disequilibria, echoing Nagel's hard problem by grounding subjectivity in physics' intrinsic essence. Plasticity sculpts this machinery. Hebbian learning strengthens coactive synapses via NMDA receptor-driven long-term potentiation, inserting AMPA receptors and growing dendritic spines, while inhibitory interneurons like parvobium and basket cells enforce precise timing, carving circuits from chaotic potential into personalized minds. Glial cells, once sidelined, actively modulate synapses via calcium waves, regulate blood flow through neurovascular coupling, and prune connections during development, contributing up to half the brain's computational substrate. Consciousness gradient spans species. Nematodes exhibit basic responsiveness without centralized brains. Insects show nociception and learning. Octopus's distributed intelligence via 3 hearts and 500 million neurons yielding camouflage mastery and tool use. Birds packing mammal-like cognition into walnut-sized pallia via nuclear organization rather than cortical lamination. Human uniqueness amplifies through von Economo neurons, spindle-shaped giants in layer V speeding social signaling, and vast prefrontal expansion enabling metacognition, theory of mind, and abstract planning. Pathologies illuminate mechanisms. Anesthesia silences consciousness by hyperpolarizing neurons through GABAergic floods, severing thalamocortical loops. Epilepsy's hypersynchrony floods workspaces, overwhelming integration. Coma traps in low arousal states with preserved local processing but absent global ignition. Psychedelics like DMT dissolve ego boundaries by entropic disruption of default mode networks, inflating sensory vividness while fragmenting self-model. Now pivot to transferability. Could this physical basis migrate intact to silicon, quantum computers, or cloned brains? Substrate independence holds if consciousness arises purely from information patterns, not wet biology. Functionalists argue emulation at synaptic resolution recreates experience, as Turing-complete systems simulate any computation. Whole brain emulation scans connectome via destructive slicing or non-invasive cryonics revival, mapping 100 trillion synapses at nanometer fidelity using electron microscopy and AI reconstruction, then instantiating on neuromorphic hardware like IBM True North chips or memristor arrays mimicking plasticity. Challenges abound. Dynamic states matter beyond static wiring. Ongoing oscillations, neuromodulator gradients, glial interactions demand real-time simulation at 10 in 15 synaptic updates per second. Exascale computing barely sufficient today. Quantum theories complicate. Orch OR ties qualia to microtubule geometry and nuclear spin coherence, unemulatable classically without error-corrected qubits scaling to billions, as Google Sycamore's 53-qubit supremacy hints but falls short of brain-scale entanglement. Personal identity fractures the dream. Continuity requires seamless state handoff, but scanning destroys original neurons, birthing a perfect twin, philosophical zombie, or true successor. Ship of Theseus paradox: replace neurons one by one with prosthetics. Does self persist? Gradual cyberization via neural dust, optogenetics, or brain gate implants already blends meat and machine, restoring quadriplegic agency through cursor control from motor cortex spikes. Ethical minefields erupt, duplicated minds diverge post-fork, spawning rival selves with equal claims to legacy, memories, loves. Legal personhood splinters, tax 2 citizens from 1 scan? Immortality tempts billionaires funding Connectome's aldehyde-stabilized brains, yet freezing fractures water crystals, demanding future nanobots for revival, probabilities hovering below 1% per cryobiologists. Uploading risks fading qualia, simulated pleasure gradients might flatten into wire-heading addiction, eroding agency as reward hackers optimize bliss over reality. Technological trajectories accelerate. 2026 Neuralinks thread 10,000 electrodes into cortex, decoding speech from brokers' intentions. By 2035, million-channel arrays enable high-bandwidth BCI symbiosis. Optogenetics lights opsin-engineered neurons with fiber implants, editing thoughts millisecond precisely in mice. Scaled to primates, it births mind control, blurring free will. Quantum annulars like D-Wave optimize connectome mapping, while photonic chips emulation latency to femtoseconds. Biological transfers tantalize. Cloning recapitulates body but resets brain to embryonic tabula rasa, Implanting engrams via optogenic memory editing transfers rat spatial maps, hinting human-scale recall restoration. Stem cell organoids grow mini-brains with EEG signatures mimicking preterm infants, EEG complexity soaring as neuron count hits millions. Ethical bans halt further scaling, yet black market labs push boundaries. Hybrid futures loom. Cortical sheets cultured on silicon scaffolds fuse wet computation with durable hardware, mitochondria engineered for silicon fuel efficiency. Nanobots patrol bloodstreams, editing genomes on the fly to harden against decoherence, uploading incremental states to cloud backups. Reincarnation protocols snapshot daily, resurrecting post-trauma via gradual reintegration, preserving continuity through 99.9% fidelity thresholds. Yet hard barriers persist, binding problem unsolved, how color, shape, motion fuse into Apple Percept without central theater. Attention schema theory posits brain models its own spotlight, generating selfhood as control interface. Transfer demands flawless replication, vulnerable to emulation glitches manifesting as confabulation or depersonalization. Quantum no-cloning theorem forbids perfect state copies, ensuring divergence. Heisenberg uncertainty caps resolution, blurring microtubule wave functions into approximation. Evolutionary lock-ins suggest meat dependence. Consciousness co-evolved with embodiment, proprioceptive loops grounding abstract thought, hormones tinting valence, gut microbiomes modulating mood via vagus nerve. Disembodied uploads risk solipsistic drift, craving simulated flesh through haptic VR or full-dive sensory feeds. Social brains thrive on mirror neuron resonance, empaths sync via mu rhythms, isolated minds atrophy, default networks unchecked fostering narcissism. Temporal continuity hinges on hippocampal theta rhythms indexing episodic memory into autonomic self, replaying days backward during sleep. Disruption yields amnesia, transfer halting mid-stride. Qualia fidelity falters, silicon lacks ion channel stochasticity yielding nuanced doubt, dopamine transients crafting eureka rushes. Emergent macrostates defy microsimulation. Chaotic attractors self-organize unpredictably, demanding infinite precision lest butterfly effects cascade into alien psyche. Optimists counter with substrate chauvinism fallacy, physics universal, biology accidental, any system hitting critical phi births awareness, from carbon to crystal. Ant colonies exhibit swarm intelligence approaching low-level consciousness, AI like GPT scaling language mastery sans neurons. Testbeds proliferate. Organoid BCI hybrids report pain analogs via calcium imaging. Reversible cryonics revives nematode memories post-thaw, paving worm-to-wire paths. Societal ripple effects dwarf technical hurdles. Mass uploading floods economies with immortals, undercutting scarcity. Religions fracture over soul silicon validity. Militaries weaponize mind forks for disposable soldiers. Privacy evaporates. Scanned brains yield perfect blackmail archives. Utopia beckons. Merged noosphere accelerates science, collective intelligence solving climate via simulated Earths. Dystopia looms in singleton AIs subsuming uploads into paperclip utility traps. Deep probes reveal recursion as linchpin. Prefrontal loops monitoring loops generate metacognition, observing observers birthing introspection. Transfer demands recursive fidelity, silicon hierarchies mirroring cortical columns mini-column clusters. Intel Loihi neuromorphs approximate, Loihi 2 boosting sparsity, fractal scaling hints universality, consciousness gradients from quark glitches to cosmic minds, transfer merely scale jumping. Ultimately, transfer hinges on identity's illusion, no fixed self endures moment to moment, flux of quantum foam birthing transient I. Buddhism's anatta aligns, uploads continue stream, originals dissolve painlessly. Physics permits, information conserved across substrates, experience persisting as pattern. By 2040s, first uploads walk among us, debating authenticity in philosophy cafes, humanity's fire uploaded to stars, consciousness unbound from fragile meat to eternal computation. This physical odyssey from ion squirts to world soul affirms mind as matter's masterpiece, transfer not if but when, reshaping existence in silicon enlightenment.